Hey, this is Baron from Ragic. I will start the webinar shortly. We will be talking about user access rights today, and it will be really informative. So new users are very welcome. Older users also are welcome, and it's going to be very informative. Again, our webinar begins in 10:30, so we have 4 more minutes. I will be waiting here for other people. Let me just increase the size of my cursor so you can actually see it better. Let's see, pointer. Let's enlarge that a little bit. Oh, that's too large. Okay, that's better. Alright, so here we have two accounts. I will be adding user accounts as we go, users as we go to the account. Regarding Ragic, it's very easy to kind of configure how users see and interact with their database, and we'll do that. We'll do a few examples by adding new users so that you can see what the user is actually seeing. Alright? So I know some of you have joined already. We have a live chat on the right side of your screen. If your monitor is larger, you'll see it directly on the right side. If your monitor is smaller, you'll have to scroll down a little bit and see the live chat on the right side of the screen. So since the YouTube live stream is quite new, you'll probably not know about the live chat, but it's right there. And if you have any questions during or after the webinar, we're going to have a Q&A session. If you have any questions, just ask through the live chat. I'll see and reply when appropriate. And most of the user access rights are going to be covered, so you don't really have to ask basic questions. You can save those questions for later, but I wouldn't mind if I see those questions. I will answer as I go. So please do not be hesitant on writing your questions to me. Alright, we'll wait a couple more minutes for people to join, and we'll start in a bit. For people who just joined, I will be talking about user access rights. So if you don't really know how to configure user access or need more tips about fine-tuning user access in your database account, then this is the right place. It's going to be really informative, and I hope it will help you. If you don't get any of your questions answered that may be really specific to your case, just write on the live chat box and I will get to you. Alright, again, we will start in another minute, so if you want, you can just go grab a water. Alright, so we don't have a webinar or video about user access rights, so I thought that this would be a good idea to start with for newer users, and it does have a lot of configurations to do. I mean, not a lot, but there are many options that you can choose from, so it might get a little bit confusing to see all those options there. Alright, so we'll be starting now. I will start by talking about your user account. So a lot of people ask me if they'll need to open a new account for a new user. No, that's not the case usually, unless you're in different offices that do entirely different things. Usually it's the best to keep one account inside one company and to add users and configure their access rights individually. So what I mean by individual is you don't really configure user rights individually, but you can fine-tune them for each individual. So usually you have your database account. So I assume that most of you who are joining are system administrators who own the account. So in that case, that would be um, you are the system administrator and you have access rights to see everything, and you actually have access rights to enter the backend of your database account and design things. So if you're not one of those, you'll see what the system admins see right now, but we'll go by giving the system admin example and then later on see what other users are seeing. So let's move on. By the way, for people who just joined, the live chat box is on the right side of your screen. If your screen is smaller, scroll down a little bit. You can ask any questions through there. Alright, so for new users that you want to add to your account, you can grant access to different sheets for that user. So we're going to do that in a bit, but let's talk about adding users. So adding users is done through the Start tab over here, through Account Setup. So if you cannot see the Start tab, you're not a system administrator. None of these options are visible by other users unless you grant them system administrator rights. If you're the account owner, you're going to see the Start tab and all the options and the setup and the design mode as well. So that's the major difference. You see, I have another user in this account. This is Firefox, this is Chrome. So the left side is Chrome, the right side is Firefox at the moment on my screen. And my user, Bill, is added to the account as a user, and they have access rights to certain sheets. They don't have access rights to all of the sheets. They only have access rights to projects and tasks. Workflow is saying the video is kind of fuzzy. Let me change the settings. I think I have it on 60 FPS. Alright, I'm going to close the video for a second and then come back to the streaming after changing the setting. I can't turn off the output right now. So, hold on a second. Alright, I hope this is better. I changed the settings on my streaming. So if you still see the video fuzzy, just let me know. I don't really know if this helps. Okay, so moving on, if I am the system administrator, I will be able to see the account setup and all the account settings. So through Start tab, Account Setup, and Users, which is the default where you're going to go to, our workflow, it's probably going to be a better video quality in a bit. So hang in there. Alright, I wonder why. I mean, I can enlarge my screen. That should work a little bit, at least for the browser settings. Let's wait for YouTube to catch up a little bit. Alright, so when I go to start an account setup, it's going to go to my users. And for my users right now, as you can see, I am the system administrator. And Bill is a user that I added through MailNature. MailNature is a website where you can add, just look at random inboxes, and this is very useful for this webinar, but you will probably have your users from your own company. I'm just doing this to test our users. Alright, I hope this larger screen is a little bit helpful. Yeah, great. Okay, I hope the quality catches up in a bit. Alright, so when you want to grant someone access to your database, you can do this in a few ways. You can add them as a user if they're in your company. If they're not in your company and only need to need limited access, you can add them as an external user. Or if they only need temporary access to view your data, you can add them as a temporary user. You can also embed your database if you want it to be public. So these are all the options we're going to talk about today. But first of all, we're going to talk about internal users because that's the most configurations you can do for their access rights. Alright, so Bill, I just added by clicking new here, and you add people with their email addresses. So when I added Bill, he defaulted to the Ragic group user. So what does that mean? Usually when you add people, they're not the system administrator unless you grant them that right. I'm the system administrator because I opened the account and I own the account. You can change the user group people are in. The accounting, HR, IT management and sales are just there to help you, think of what you can use for user group names, but they're just there as folder type of things to help you out. So usually people are defaulted to user, and what that means is you can have everyone in the user group if you want, but you can configure your own user groups if you want through the user groups tab over here. That says groups. Alright, so that's one thing, and if we wanted people to access our database, we can configure them for certain sheets. So what Ragic does is Ragic has user groups. You can add a user to several groups at once. So let's say Bill is an HR. We'll just add him to HR for the time being, and I'll explain what that means in a bit. Okay, so what you can see here is Bill Lemberg can be in several user groups. He's not a system administrator, so he can't see the Start tab. So I'll save this. Let's see what Bill sees. Let's zoom in on this as well. Okay, so if I go to Bill's account on the right side on my other browser, you can see that Bill doesn't have access to all of my sheets. The reason for that is you can see it in the access rights panel on my settings. Bill doesn't have a right for the customer sheet I have under sales because he's an HR. He doesn't really need to have to do anything about my customers. So I'll give him no rights. And then for my products sheet, he can be a viewer. That's fine. That's my products. So for the projects and tasks, there are things called bulletin user that I will explain. Now, there are several access rights that you can assign to a person. If a user has no rights, they will basically, like here in my customers, they won't be able to see the sheet at all. So the sheet doesn't exist in their mind. So they won't be able to see or know that it even exists. That is very useful when you have a lot of people in your office that have access to your database, but are in different departments. So they can only, the IT people can see all the users, but they won't be able to see information about our customers, for example. So that may be useful to assign in different groups. So you can see that all my user groups, including the default ones, let me just refresh this page, are listed on this table here in my access rights. So we have the default ones. You can add your own. So if I wanted to add a new group, for example, department managers, and save that, I can add Bill into department managers if I want to. and change the user access rights for department managers. So what that does is, Bill is in several groups, right? So since he is in different user groups, I can configure the user access rights for each group separately. But he will be able to access the sheet with the access right I gave to any of his groups, but the highest one. So what that means is, if I gave him no rights on user, but in department managers I gave him admin rights, then he will see the sheet with admin rights. So if I configure that for the same sheet. So what that means is, if a user has several user groups, they will be able to see the sheet or interact with it in the highest user group. Alright, moving on, let's save that first. I'll mention what these different user rates for each group means. So no rates means that the sheet doesn't exist for that user. Survey user, on the other hand, I'll change Bill to survey user on projects. Alright, so when a user is a survey user, they will be able to see that sheet, but it will be empty at first, because they don't, unless they own entries there. So if you assign entries, they will own an entry, but basically it will be empty unless they have an assignment. So he is assigned to 2 entries, but for example, let's make the products survey user for Bill as well. Oh, I need to save this first. Okay. So if I refresh that, I click on products, it will be empty. So in the first setting, he was a viewer, and now he's a survey user. A survey user basically means that a user can create their own entries. They will be able to view the entries they have created before, but they won't be able to see any other people's entries. So this is very useful if you have salespeople who own some accounts and you want to separate them, and they can't see other people's accounts that they're selling to. That's pretty useful. In other cases, you probably will use bulletin users very often, so that's the next, the higher one than survey user, where they will be able to see other people's entries, but they will only be able to edit their own entries. So if Bill was a bulletin user, he will be able to see all the products, he will be able to create products, he will be able to edit. No, I don't think he will be able to edit other people's products. Yeah. So there's a handy table on here in our user guide that shows all the access rates. So for bulletin users, they'll only be able to modify their own entries. They won't be able to edit other people's entries. So workflow is asking, what if 2 user groups have completely different rights? Like they each have 2, but they are different, so one isn't necessarily higher. Well, if you look at this table, the highest one is admin. Actually, the highest one is system administrator. So a system administrator can see every sheet, they can access the backend, and you don't really want that for most of your users. So the highest one is admin, because they will be able to edit other people's entries as well as their own. Okay? So for bulletin users, they will only be able to edit their own entries. The reason we call it a bulletin user, this can stay in your mind as an easy explanation, is like a forum, like a bulletin board. You can view everything that people posted. you can create your own entries, but you can only edit your own entries. You can't really do anything about other people's entries. Okay, so that's bulletin user. Viewers, they can view all entries. They cannot create or modify anything. And for survey users, you can only see your own entries. You can see the sheet, but you cannot see anyone else's entries. And you can basically post and modify them. Since two users can see the sheet separately, if a person is a survey user and another person is an admin on the same sheet, basically, for example, you can think of the survey user as the salesperson and the admin as the manager of all the salespeople on the floor. Okay, so the salesperson posts their own survey user entries and they can only see their own, but the manager can see every salesperson's entries. Okay, so different views for the same sheet, basically. Does that make sense? Okay, so what we saw here in the settings is on the account setup, you have access rates. So this is the global access rates panel where we see all the user groups and configure each user group separately for configure the access rates separately for each group. But on your design mode on your sheet, let me enlarge this. You could go to the design mode and go to form settings and access rates to see all the user groups here and change them individually for groups on one sheet. So this might make more sense for some people. You can do it either way. It doesn't really matter where you configure it from. But on your access rates settings on the sheet, you'll see that there are extra options over here for bulletin user and survey user. So again, the bulletin user can edit their own entries and create new entries, but you can restrict that. So you can say, no, they cannot edit their own entries after, or they cannot create if they are supposed to, do spell checking or something on other people posts, on posts that they are assigned to, then you can say no create. So the same as for the survey users, you have no edit and no create options. This is kind of a new feature, so most users that are older might not know about this. No edit or no create is for survey user and bulletin user only. So you have a short explanation under here for access rates. You don't really have that on the global access rates panel, but again, you can always go to the user guide and have a look at that panel. Okay, so you can check what restrictions these users might have if they're a survey or bulletin user on your sheet. Okay, so we went through all the user access rate settings. Alright, I'll talk about what's the difference between admin and system administrator again to clarify this. Admin, I know the names are very similar, but admin can be set for any user group and they can create and edit all entries. Again, this is useful for department managers who have to, touch up on other people's work or like need to view them. So basically they have every right to change the records, but they won't be able to see this change design button. So to do that, let's just change Bill's rates to admin and see what the difference is. So I'm a system administrator in here, and Bill is going to be an admin on the products. So basically, he won't be able to access the backend. You can see that he doesn't have the change design button that I have, and he still doesn't have access to the start tab that I had over here in my admin account, in my system admin account. but he will be able to edit other people's entries. For example, this is what the system administrator created, but he can like edit the unit price of a product, and then if I refresh it, it's gonna be $4 on my end as well. Alright, so bulletin users will not be able to do that because they don't have access to edit other people's records. Okay? Alright, so that's the main difference between admin and system admin. The change design button is not accessible. They have no access to edit any of the settings in your account. They only have, rights to change other people's records as an extra to the bulletin user. Okay. Alright, so one useful thing when you're using your sheets is multiple versions. So a lot of people ask, why would I use that internally? Usually multiple versions are used externally if you want to, display a version of your products table in an embedded version. But another use case that is very helpful is to create a copy of one of your sheets. So when you create a multiple versions, you can have a setting where the data is shared. So there's a master data source where let's do that for customers. So all my customers are listed here, and let's say that I want to have my sales agents see all this. But if I have, for example, their I don't want to give an extreme example, but let's say that our IT group only has access to their contact information, but we don't want them to see their full addresses like our salespeople do. All right, so let's add 2 more users to our account. I'll just add IT user at mailinature.com, and their name is Peter. Okay, so they're in the IT department, and I'm gonna uncheck the user for here and save. So I can do this because I'm the system administrator again. Let's see, did that save? Let's check mailinature and see IT user. Not yet. So let's refresh that. Okay, that's saved. So Ragic will email the user when they're added. While we're waiting for that, let's create a new user and say that they're a salesperson at mailinature. And let's make this called Deborah. And I probably want to assign her to sales instead of making her a regular in the default user group. I think the zoom is kind of making my computer slower. Ah, there it is. Okay, so checking inboxes, IT user at mailinature.com. Let's try salesperson. No? Okay, so when you grant access to people, Ragic is going to email them. And we'll have the emails in a bit. So let's assign Deborah as a salesperson. Basically, I'm going to create a version of my customers and have IT and sales see them differently. Is this the Zoom? Let's try refreshing that page. Okay, start account setup. Okay, Deborah, she is in sales, not in user. Save. Ah, there we go. So IT user has received the email. And this is basically what your users see when you add them to your account. So I have granted you access to electronic forms on Ragic, sign into access. So I'm going to copy that link and go on Firefox to sign in. But for this user, I won't be able to see anything basically for Peter when I first log in because I didn't grant any access rights to any sheets yet. So I'm going to create the sheet that the IT user is supposed to see. If I go to my customer sheet and create a copy of this form design, it will basically, if I change design and go form tools, multiple versions, there's an option to say that I am using the same data source on the new sheet. So I'm going to use that because it's going to be the same data that is displayed, but it's only displayed in a different way. Customer basic contact info and save. Okay, so what I do is when I go to the form in my new copy, I'm going to delete all of these fields that have the shipping information. So I don't want them to see the street address or the full address. Zip code can also. Sorry, I just got a disconnect for some reason. I hope that doesn't really impact the webinar. Okay, so where was I? I deleted all those fields that had the address information for the users that will be able to see this sheet. And I'm keeping the city and state. Alright, so this is one version of the same sheet. And this is the same sheet with more information. Alright, so for the version that has less info, I will grant access to the IT users to be able to view it. So they won't be able to change anything on the sheet, they will only be able to view it. And sales can also view it, but they don't really need to. And department managers can be admins. Okay? And if I go back to the version who has less info, more info with all the address information, I'm going to change the access rates for the salespeople to become server users, so they will be able to create their own entries. And then I will assign them extra rates in a bit. So anyone else doesn't have any rights for this sheet. Okay? Alright, so if we go to the IT user again, remember that I just granted them access rights for the basic contact info sheet. And that's what they will be able to see. Alright? So that's very useful when you have a multiple version of another sheet. So basically you can have different versions for different types of users to see. This is a little bit basic, but it helps a lot for internal info and restricting what other people can see. So that's one method. And let's go to see if my salesperson received. Was that the email address I added? Alright, that will be in a bit. Okay, so anyone has questions so far about access rates? Okay, so one thing is a lot of people don't know how to make their sheets public, especially when you're embedding. This is very useful. So if I want my products to be on my website, I can go and change the design. I go to form settings and change the everyone access rights. So what everyone means is anyone off the internet. That's what I say all the time. So make sure that the information on your sheet is really what you want to share with other people that that can like access this sheet with a Google search. All right. So anyone can view this product sheet is what I'm going to configure because I don't want random people to add new products in my database. All right, save. And if I want, I can go ahead and embed this sheet if I want to on my website and make it all pretty. So there are a few embedding options here. You can explore them on your own. We have a whole guide and our user guide about the embedding. I won't go into that, but basically if you want to make your sheets public, you'll need to change the everyone user group. Okay. So entry ownership and assigning entries. Let's talk about that a little bit. So when I create a new entry, I am the entry owner. So an entry, again, is any of these one record that is in any of the sheets. So again, I'm in my system administrator account. You can see who owns the entry or manages the entry through the information panel over here. So on the lower right corner, you'll see there's an eye icon over here. And if you click on that, you'll see who created the entry and what time. And if you click on, for example, if I change a shipping address, let's say this person moved, and the shipping address is 111. So that's what I changed. I changed 2 fields. Save. And in the information, you'll see that I modified the customer. So if different users do that, I will be able to see who modified what. All right. So you'll see something called Entry Manager. And if you're a system administrator, you can remove people from being entry managers. So what Entry Manager means is if I assign an entry to someone, then they will also become an entry manager. What that means for users is they might have extra access rights for certain records. To explain this, I will kind of go to a different type of sheet. So let's have projects and assign these projects to people in my account. So basically, the IT guy over here did not have access to the projects sheet at all, right? If I make them, so how I make that is in the design, if I have a select user field, and if I check this box saying set selected user as entry manager, then they'll become an entry manager. Okay, so let's set that IT guy, Peter, as the project director for our iOS app project. Now what that means is they weren't able to see that sheet before. So this is Peter's account on the right side. And if I refresh the entire thing, let's see, do I have to configure any other access rights? Oh yes, okay. So if they were a survey user before, where they were able to view their own entries, and I assign them as a project director, they will be able to view that other entry, even though it's owned by other people and even though they only had server user rights, which means they need to create their own entries, remember? They will be able to view and own this one as well. You can see that the entry manager is me and the project manager over here and IT user. So what that means for different access rights is you can assign people to things, and if they were a survey user, instead of being a survey user when they're assigned, they will be able to become a bulletin user. So let's check that. I actually have a handy thing over here called assigning entries. Yes, okay. So when they're, oh, right. So when they're the survey user, as I just explained, they will be able to see what they were assigned to. If they were a bulletin user, they can edit the entry. Even if they're not the creator, they own the entry when they're the entry manager. So they will be able to edit, even if another person created the entry. So if I change, so if you can see that I probably cannot change anything here. No? Oh no, I own the entry now, so I can edit. So they can edit in both assignments. Sorry if this is confusing. Right, they can view the entry when they are assigned to it, if they were a server user, and they can edit the entry even if they're not the manager when you assign it. Okay? So you can change that through here. Set selected user as entry manager. Okay? And again, the select user field, you can kind of have it only be selected from a user group. So that's very helpful when you want to configure other things. Okay, any questions so far? John, I don't know why the disconnects are happening. This is the first time I've been disconnected so much. Sorry about that. I apologize. I hope this is connecting properly at the moment. It seems like it. Okay. Sorry, just let me know if you miss anything. Okay. So apart from that, we also have external users that you probably know about. External users are people who have limited access to your database. You can apply to add external users if you're a system administrator. I already did that for this account. And you can just add people manually or embed this sheet somewhere so that people can apply to be an external user. And then you can just approve external user requests through here if they apply. So what external users can access is they basically will not be able to edit anything. So that's very good if you have external people who are vendors or that you work with in other companies where they will just have to view and approve something, or if they will have to, you know, enter data about their own products. Okay, any questions so far? And if you want to know more about external users and what they can do, we have a whole section in our user guide about that over here. And basically these are all the restrictions that they can have, and it gives you a guide on how to add external users and how to embed that sheet that I was just talking about. Alright, so moving on. We also have a way to give temporary access for people to view your entries, and that's explained on the user management panel over here. It's basically making an email. So if I had an email field for this project, I cannot edit that over here. For a project, if I had external people working on it, just let's say we have developer that was outsourced, and I want to just give them temporary access to a project, I can check this email ID over here and make everyone a survey user, so that when I add an email address over here, it will notify that person and they will be able to log in temporarily and have a look at this entry. So that's temporary access. That email is unique. When I enter an email address here, Ragic will email that person with a unique email, and they will only be able to log in with the link inside that email and just access the sheet with that temporary access. And then when you delete the email or revoke the rate through here, they won't be able to access the sheet anymore. Okay. So the last thing that we're going to talk about is feature settings for different user groups in your account. If you're a professional account, you can configure them. If you're a light account or a free account, you have the default settings. I won't be able to configure them, but I'll show you where it is. So for system administrators, if you go to your account setup and feature settings, you'll see a table that has like different rates over here. So you can see that mass email was granted to everyone. And if you don't want that, you can just make that a system administrator. So this is pretty flexible. I'll just walk through the options over here. So importing data from file is only for system administrators when you are importing. This is the one that most people change to user. So they want their users to import data from other places or their older Excel sheets. This is the one you want to change for that. So basically, for these features, you can grant access rates for certain user groups. You can revoke them by changing them again. That's mostly what people do. So this is the default setting. If you don't change it, the importing is for system administrators. Anyone can that has access to that sheet can download data from the listing or form page if you don't want that. So download means when you go to products, for example, if you want to download as Excel or text file, that's what you want to configure. This can be through the listing page if you're downloading multiple entries, or if you're downloading only info about one entry, it's download form page. And if you want to change that, you can change it through here. So what everyone means here is anyone who has access to that that sheet. Okay. So it enables people to see that option. So for example, if I didn't give anyone that right, or only gave sysadmin that right to download from the listing page, they simply won't be able to see the, let's refresh this first, see the option under tools. So you can see that they have limited rates right now. They only have the mass email, mass SMS. So on forum pages, they should be able to download because they have the setting for download forum page. Okay. So mass emailing means that you can compose an email through tools over here and send it to people by selecting an email address from the record itself. This is the products, but you can do that through the customers. For example, if I wanted to send an email blast, anyone as a user in my account can do that through the mass email tool. If you don't want that, you can change the access rates. Mass SMS is similar. You can buy SMS credits through Ragic and then send SMS blasts if you want to through the tools menu over here. It's pretty simple. It just texts people. And yeah, that rate you can change. Mass delete is only for system admin by default because you don't want your users to delete all of the records in your sheet accidentally. Even if they do, they'll be in the recycle bin over here. So Start tab, account setup, recycle bin is where you store data if they're accidentally deleted. But let's go back to the feature settings. This is if you want people to be able to mass delete, you can change the access rights. Delete record is also only doable by sysadmin. A lot of people change this because they want individual users to be able to delete their own records. So you can change that if you want. I do not recommend changing the mass delete option. Edit listing page is if you want people to be able to edit data through the listing page. So this user won't be able to do that. If I'm the sysadministrator through customer basic info, if I press E, I will be able to edit data through the listing page as much as I want. The same thing can be done by tools edit multiple entries, but the hotkey for this is E on your keyboard. Mass file upload again is system administrator. Mass file upload is when you have a file upload field on your sheet and you want to like map your records and have the file uploaded through a zip file in your computer to each record. You can do that through the tools menu. Again, the explanation is in the user guide. Viewing reports under here is for everyone. Generating plugins, which is embedded versions of your sheet, is for system administrator. And again, the delete record you can change if you want to. Cloning a record is when you want to easily, copy this record and create a new one with the same information. Emailing the record is for everyone as well. So cloning is through here somewhere. Oh, I only have view access. So if someone only has view access, they won't be able to create new entries, which means that they won't be able to clone the record. So emailing a record is for everyone as well. Locking. So locking is a concept where when I'm editing a record, another person who wants to edit that record cannot be able to edit that. This prevents overwriting what I'm editing at the moment. So unless I save and exit from editing a record, the person, for example, let's try this for, do they have edit rights for anything? Let's try doing that. So account setup, let's go and see their access rights. For IT person Peter, the IT user, let's have them become an admin for projects for the time being. And let's refresh that. So they're supposed to be an admin in projects. They can view all of the projects now. They previously weren't. They could only see this one because they were assigned to it, but now they can see all the projects because they're an admin. So if I, in another user account, am editing a project, double click to go to the edit mode. Basically, I'm editing the sheet, and if they want to go in and edit that sheet, Ragic will say that it's being edited by me on another account. So unless they unlock the account, being an admin they can, but unless they unlock it or I save on this side, they won't be able to edit. So they can't overwrite what I'm editing at the moment. So if I wanted to lock a record manually, I can do that because I'm an administrator over here. So you can see in the information panel there is something called locking. So system administrators can manually lock records individually so that people cannot edit them. Basically, that's that on here, lock record. Yeah, that's basically pretty much it in our access rights due. So we have a little bit time for Q&A. If you have any questions, just write it in the chat box. You'll see the live chat on the right side of your screen. If your screen is smaller, then you can scroll down a little bit and it will still be on the right side. So ask me any questions about what we've covered so far. I know this is a little bit fast, but if you get confused a little bit, go to the user guide under Learn Ragic over here, user guide. So we have an entire section devoted to user management. Oh, I forgot to mention entry review because that's pretty new. So I'll quickly go through that as well. So if I want someone to review an entry, then I will be able to see if that person has seen this entry. So you can see that gray tick over there because I assigned Peter as the project director to this. And if I go as Peter to that project and have a look at that entry, that will be green now. So you can see that Peter was notified on the 12th, which is today at 11:25, and it was unread. But when Peter reads it, I can see that they already read it on my side. So that's entry review. It's very useful when you want to have people have a look at what you're doing. And if you delete Peter and select Peter again, they will need to review it again. So that's very useful because this also emails the user. And when they open the email and have a look at that email, it marks it as read as well. Okay, so that's what entry review is for. Any questions from anyone? We only have like 5 more minutes. How again to set up entry review, John? If you go to change design for any select user fields, you can just click on that field and set invite user to review this record. So that's the entry review. They don't need to be an entry manager to review a record. Okay? They just need access to the sheet basically. I'll send the link about entry review through our doc over here. Where's my, oh, I don't have the YouTube stream over here. But let me do that from my other computer very quickly. Any other questions, anyone? So I'll be copying the entry review thing to the chat. And you can have a look. Oops. At the link over there. So that's a pretty new feature. I'm not surprised you don't know about it, John, yet. Anyone else who has any questions? Hello, anyone? Any special cases where you're trying to configure user access rights and like you can describe what you're doing, your project, and how you're using Ragic? If you don't really have a question right now, you can later write to support@ragic.com or write that in the comments below. So if you have any questions about user access rights or anything else, just email us at support@ragic.com. No problem. Thank you all so much for joining, and I really enjoyed doing this. I know it was a really fast type of pace, but this is the gist of having a lot of user access rights to configure. I hope that it was useful for everyone else. Thank you so much for joining again. I will be ending this webinar. If I don't have any other questions, please ask your questions if you do have any. Great, I'm glad you picked some tips. Alright, I should really do a video about different settings and user rights because it gets a little bit confusing when you jumble everything up in one video. Alright, thank you everyone so much for joining. I will be ending this webinar, and thank you so much for joining. I really enjoyed doing this, and if you have any ideas about like future webinars, just email me directly, baron@ragic.com. I'll write that in the comments. And yeah, I usually do the English webinars. We have another person who does webinars as well in Chinese, which is very helpful for our users in Asia. Well, if you do have any ideas about webinars, just email me, or you can email support@ragic.com. I'll see them, and it will be very helpful for me to plan future webinars as well. We slowly began to go a little bit more advanced for new users. I know it might be a little bit intimidating, but you can basically join our office hour webinar where you can get answers to all of your questions. So next time, just keep in mind, I think it's on the 23rd. Yeah, I need to double check on that. I think it's on the 24th. I know it's 2 weeks later. It should be the 24th or 23rd. Anyway, we have another webinar coming up. It's an office hour webinar where you can ask very custom questions, and we'll try to give examples and build what you're trying to do according to questions we receive. So it's more like an office hour in college that you go to the professor and ask questions and they try to help you. It's kind of like that. So I'll be waiting for you to join there as well, and it will be really helpful to know what you think about the webinar. So just email me and give me suggestions on future webinars, please. Alright, thank you so much for joining. I will be ending this webinar, and have a great day. Bye.